Good evening and a warm welcome to the viewers from all over the world. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, the CEO's Chair is a unique program where we showcase inspiring stories of successful CEOs. We give you an insight into their mindset and discuss not only their challenges, but also help you understand their definitions of success and leadership. So today's our actually 44th episode, and we have another such inspiring CEO and founder with us today, Sougata Basu, founder at CashRich. Sougata, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you, Siddharth. Great to be here.
So Sougata, while a lot of the audience members will be familiar with your background, but I just wanted to share a few lines about your journey so far as well.
Sure.
Prior to founding CashRich in 2016, you were managing portfolios of Ultra UHNI clients with UBS in Boston before you subsequently moved to the Tata Steel Group to manage their Treasury Operations at the Tata House in Mumbai. And then you did your MBA in finance. I believe it was actually a dual certification with an MBA as well as an MTech from Boston University. Sougata, you conceptualized and built CashRich as a dedicated wealth management app that's designed to give its users complete control and transparency in their investments. So I think it's an excellent idea, definitely in need of the hour. And first of all, a very commendable initiative that you've undertaken, Sougata. So where did the idea come from?
Sure. So the idea came from the problems that I was seeing around myself, in my family, and within my friend circle. So if you remember, in 2010, 2011 timeframe, most of these investments used to happen using paperwork. And also the bigger challenge was that if you walked into a bank, then normally they would sell you something called a ULIP, which is a insurance linked product. And because of the heavy, commissions and inbuilt fees, the bank relationship managers would definitely first try to sell you those type of products, which were inherently bad for anybody. And I saw my father buying those sort of products. Even some of my other family members had a lot of insurance products in their portfolio, and which are not investments actually. Okay, but it's just packaged as an investment. So that's where I thought that this is a huge problem. And when I was managing money for Tata Steel Group, the corpus was huge. It was almost 12,000 crores, and there almost on a daily basis I had to spark thousands of crores of investments in different types of funds. And there I came to know about liquid funds. And in the year around 2013-14 period, those liquid funds used to give a very good return. It was, I think, 8.5% kind of return, and where we could also withdraw anytime. Now I tried to buy that liquid fund for my father, because I thought that it's a good product. It's a relatively low risk and easy to understand product, and then it will be good for his portfolio. But when we went to the bank to buy that product, nobody was willing to sell. The one private bank in Calcutta actually refused, said that we don't sell this product. I couldn't understand the reason why, because it was very easy to transact. They could have just, even though it was in physical paperwork also we were ready to do, but they were not ready to sell. Then I came back to Mumbai and I asked the ICICI and all the HDFCs of the world, like, what exactly is the issue? You are coming and selling me thousands of crores of those same things, but when I am going as a retail investor, then people are not selling me that. So then they told me that those liquid funds are not having any inbuilt commissions or fees, or it was a very low cost product, and we don't want to sell because it doesn't recover any of our costs. It is a product which is good for the end investor, but not for the companies or intermediaries. Okay, so that's where I thought that this can only change if we use technology. Otherwise, really the economics doesn't add up to sell a product which you will not earn anything, and then it's good for the end investor, but then nobody in the value chain is earning, so they don't want to push that product. Okay, so but if it is technology driven, then the marginal cost of delivering the service is zero. The user will himself transact, is just a database entry, it doesn't matter. So when we started with this liquid fund product in our app, and that became very successful because people thought that it is such a good thing, then why are people not selling it. Now obviously with the interest rates and all, the returns and all have come down, but still the product has its own importance, and it is a good thing for people to understand. It's a replacement.
I think it's a great initiative that you're trying to democratize the entire investment cycle, so to say, and give people much more transparency in all of their interactions as well, which I think is one of the biggest things that's lacking, at least in the Indian investment portfolio. I would, if you were to ask my opinion. To go back a couple of years, Sougata, you are originally from Kolkata, but you went to college in Boston, and you're currently based out of Mumbai, but now you're spending the lockdown in Ranchi. So quite the global citizen.
Yes.
So taking you back to your couple of years in Boston where you were doing your dual degree, Sougata, what was that experience like, and what made you come back to India after having a great time, I'm sure, in Boston?
Yes, so I'll also take you a little bit, before that, then you will understand the entire journey. So I did my engineering from BITS Mesra Ranchi, and after that engineering, I was working with the Tata Group only, but in their Jamshedpur manufacturing plant. And while I was working there, I had developed an interest in finance, and I was trying to do my own investments, and there were incidences where I had also been duped by agents. So I had also myself, at that time, I didn't have any knowledge and experience. So I was also seeing that, there are people who are selling me stuff with the wrong reasons. And then slowly I was developing interest in finance. I had taken the CFA level 1, etc. And I had always this interest to become an entrepreneur. So the SOP, or the statement of purpose which you have to write during your MBA, that exactly has the same things which I am currently doing. So it's not a fluke. It was kind of planned, and
it's actually by design.
Yeah. So I have generally believed in long-term planning. If you plan long-term, for like 10 years, 15 years, if you plan for a long term, then all the other decisions that you take are a subset to go towards the longer term plan, right? So my plan, in fact, in that SOP was that I will use technology and I will do something in finance to create a business. Obviously, at that time, there was no word called fintech, and I didn't know also exactly what I will be doing. But that was exactly the SOP. In fact, at that time, I started a website called daulatguru.com, which is still there. It's not very active, but it was there. It was basically related to careers in finance. And so that was like a small, side initiative or venture, you can say. But it was mainly for my own learning also. And that I had started before my MBA. And during my MBA, I had also scaled it a little. Then during the MBA, I purposely took those two courses which are helping today. One was MBA in finance, and the other was MS in information systems. So it was again technology and finance. And because I knew, though I was flexible when I went to US, like how many years, to stay there and work, etc. I thought maybe, I could immediately come back, or also stay for a year or two and get some more experience and come back. So that was a flexibility which I had thought about. However, when I went there, I also realized that you couldn't start a business in US because you will be always in a H-1B visa. And if you're on a visa, then you really can't start a business. You can be a part of a small business, big business, all that, but you will not have your own business. So that constraint then led me to think that, okay, I'll anyway have to come back and start something in India. And also there were some, personal commitments and, coming to stay with my parents and get married, etc. So there are a number of, reasons, and it was all planned that way. So then before I left Tata's for the MBA, I had spoken to the CFO, and I told him that I'm going to do my MBA, but I'll come back and I can join your team if you are, willing. And then that way it was more structured like a study leave. So, it was, so it was already, I had spoken to the company. So when I had come back, and then they also, gave me a very good position in Mumbai. So it was obviously Bombay House is a very prestigious place to work. The work was quite good, and also they gave me a nice 3 BHK on a Marine Drive and all that. So it was a good package overall, and I thought it's a good start to the career. It will give me a nice platform to learn and also network with the people who matter in the industry. And then at an opportunity, time when I really have an idea which is concrete, and I think, I can take the jump at that point, I would go into entrepreneurship.
No, I think that's a great story, Saugata, that a lot of entrepreneurs and would-be entrepreneurs, students that are currently studying abroad as well, would definitely resonate with.
Yeah.
So they say that one of the biggest hurdles or obstacles of entrepreneurship is a monthly paycheck. How difficult was it for you to walk away from a 3 bedroom on Marine Drive to go to work every day at Tata House and to get into the uncertainty of entrepreneurship?
Right. So little bit of prior planning was also involved.
Okay.
During that intermediate period, I had tried to start, like my wife had started a venture, which was more of a consulting venture. So there we had some initial success. And so I knew that my paycheck would stop, but there would be something coming to my wife, and that will,
Okay.
help us in the intermediate period. And also I'll
Okay.
need to, raise funding and all. So those things were in obviously thought through. I had also saved some money, not much, but still something for the intermediate 6-7 months, and then we were able to
Super.
raise funding, which helped us to further grow. But yes, I think that financial planning is very, very important. And one of the very important points, which especially if there are some students who are listening or trying to go for an MBA and all, if you want to be an entrepreneur, the biggest risk or hurdle is an education loan, especially if you're going outside India. Okay, so in my planning in 2007-8, when I was planning to go for an MBA, I created an Excel to actually see how long it will take for me to pay off a loan. And because till that loan is there, I wouldn't be an entrepreneur. I know, because then I'll always think about how to pay back that loan. So I had shortlisted many colleges, and based on the GMAT, etc., I could get into certain colleges. But I decided that my primary criteria will be whoever gives me the maximum scholarship. Because if I get maximum scholarship, then I will have less loan. And so it was quite planned. It's not, again, not a fluke. So I'm saying that if I just blindly go and have a 1.5 crore loan, then I will not think about entrepreneurship. But if I have zero loan, then I can take the risk. So that's where when I went to Boston University, I got around 90% scholarship. So anyway, my cost of education was very low. It was lower than an Indian MBA. Plus, I continuously started working from the very first semester to do some sort of a teaching assistantship, research assistantship, some sort of internship kind of a work, so that I could earn the monthly cost of living. So net, I didn't take anything from my parents here. I did it on my own, and when I came back, I had really no debt.
No, I think that's a great point, because I've studied in the US myself as well. And one of the things that I wanted to do before I graduated was to make sure that because I've heard so many horror stories about when the loan kicks in and the interest kicks in, and you start your career with that weight on your shoulders, it distracts you from everything else. So I think it's a very practical decision that you took. Like you said, all of your decisions so far have been practical. They've all been planned in advance. Unless you are somebody who's a fortune teller or somebody who reads the future, you probably did not see the lockdown or the COVID pandemic coming as well. How has that been for you and everybody else at CashRich?
Yeah, so in January 2020, if you say nobody knew about this lockdown and all, it was impossible to predict. By
Correct.
the end of February, when the incident, in Italy and all, we were coming to know, right? Like in Italy, how serious it was getting. So at that is the point when at least I was able to start predicting from that point, not before that. Okay. So around February end, when we heard the stories from Italy, I called my friends who are in Europe and US, etc. And I told them that, in India, the cases are not so much, but what do you think? What is going on? So they gave me a real ground report. And I don't generally believe in the normal traditional media or WhatsApp university kind of thing, because that's something which distracts you. So I want to always cross-check information and question all assumptions and be a little skeptical. That is just my nature. So that's why I just kept thinking that why are people in India so overconfident and saying that nothing will happen? We have very good immune system. We have sunlight, and we have thali and lot of whatever diya, etc. We have a lot of things, but then I was skeptical from the very beginning. So by the beginning of March, I tried to understand that what is going on in Mumbai and Pune area, and there the local reports, it was not reported in the national media, but in the local media we could find cases of people getting affected by COVID without any exposure to international travel, without any sort of exposure to another person whom they know, which
Absolutely.
essentially means community transmission. And this I am talking in the first week of March. So immediately when I came to know about this, I thought that, this is not a question of if, it is a question of when this bomb will explode in Mumbai, because obviously there are slums, there is local train. If something is such a big scale is happening, it's happening in Spain and Italy, then there is nothing which is stopping it in Mumbai. And I didn't know about, places like Ranchi and Patna, but at least in Mumbai I was sure. So immediately I told my family to leave. They went to Ranchi. I had a very expensive office lease with WeWork. I just cancelled it within the second week of March. They were saying that, why are you cancelling? It is just a matter of 2 weeks. I said that maybe, but I'm just not willing to continue. And I also came back and I gave my team members some time to practice work from home, etc. But at that time, I was only thinking that this will last for maybe 2 months or so. That is how I had estimated. Obviously, I also didn't know it will be so long, but anyway, that's how it was.
But I'm very glad to see that despite your skeptical nature and your financial background, you maintain a very positive and enthusiastic outlook towards business, which I think is very important for an entrepreneur.
Yeah. So you have to be a little balanced, because anybody tells something on TV, you can't take it on face value. You have to question, like, why is that going to be true? And many times, it is not true.
So Sougata, most people say, and these are again people that are talking about starting up and entrepreneurship and so on, that it's recommended to start up with at least one co-founder, if not two. Do you have a co-founder? If not, was that an intentional decision?
So basically, I have a founding team, but I don't have a co-founder as such. I have a founding team, and that team really helped me to build the business from scratch. And I think there are advantages of having a co-founder who will listen to you, exchange ideas, etc. And there is a lot of emotional support also that you may need in the beginning. So there is an advantage to having that. But on the other side, it may also happen that there are I have seen some co-founders fighting, and there's a ego clash, etc. So those are also the downside to it. And here the decision making is quite clear, like who's taking the last or final call. So that way, there are plus and minus of both. But I have always had this good founding team, which has helped me.
Very nice. And Sougata, CashRich is now what, approximately 4 years old, if I'm correct?
Yeah.
So if you had to isolate maybe 2 or 3 of the top learnings from those past 4 years, I know it must be difficult because every day is like a reality show in itself. But what are the top 2 or 3 learnings that you could share with me and with the audience as well?
Sure. So sometimes, you may have already heard that ideas are not so important. It's the execution that matters. But even, within that, what I have learned is that execution takes longer than what you plan. So even after doing all sorts of, planning and project management, whatever is the plan, like, something will roll out by this date. Invariably, something will go wrong or something new will get added, and etc. And it will keep stretching. So execution is not only tough, but it is always, almost always going to take more time and effort than what you initially think. And that's where people kind of, maybe underestimate the effort. You are an entrepreneur, you'll understand, even planning a small design creative or an emailer, etc. It seems so simple, but then it takes so many times and iterations, right?
Right. So even and especially in the beginning, when you don't have the resources or the investments to be able to outsource it or to get anybody else to do it, you have to do everything yourself.
Exactly. So that the time of execution, and that is a learning which I had, and also how much you can, delegate. So obviously, if something comes up and, we can easily delegate, but there are certain aspects which you cannot. And if you're an entrepreneur, then there are many such aspects which you are not able to delegate. So that's also a very difficult situation. Excuse me. So in a big company like the Tatas, suppose there is a query related to income tax or RBI or any other regulatory body. There would be a legal team, a compliance team. You can just forward the email and it gets done. But here, if you forward the email and it doesn't get done, you can't go to RBI and say, I had forwarded the email.
Absolutely.
Right. You are responsible. So
and especially as the founder and the CEO, the buck stops with you every time.
Exactly.
No, and my father is ex-army, and one of his favorite sayings is that no plan survives contact with the enemy. So that is very relatable to the life of an entrepreneur as well, where you can plan for execution, you can have everything, decided the way that you want, but especially in India, nothing goes according to plan. So you need to make sure that, excuse me, that you're planning for that as well. Now, Sougata, you talked about decision making and you talked about delegation as well. How do you decide on a day-to-day basis what to prioritize and what not to prioritize, especially now that you've evolved in your journey as a startup founder and CEO as well?
Right. And, in a startup, there are a lot of things which become urgent. So you have to kind of decide like what is urgent and important, what is urgent but not so important.
Okay.
That framework is required because many things are urgent, but it's not so important. But it's just that somebody has an urgency that, you need to do this. So if you can decide which are the urgent and important and focus on that, rest you try to delegate. And also while delegating, I try to find like, can I do it once in the beginning so that I know the process? That way I will also know how to manage the person who's doing it. And if that person is taking too much time or he's making a mistake, I'll just know, I have some background. Otherwise I'll be clueless, how the work is written. So one time I want to just try something and see.
No, and I think that's a great point. I was just talking to a CEO yesterday as well, and he's told me something along the same lines. That it's also important to know what are your core areas of expertise, because you might like to do something or you enjoy doing something, but at the same time, you may not be good at it. And that's when it comes to, having to delegate or having to outsource it as and when you can.
Right.
Sougata, you also were able to raise, I believe, seed funding. Is that correct? During your journey?
Yes, there are 3 rounds of funding which has happened, but seed and angel type of,
Perfect. So could you just give us a brief overview of what that experience was like, right from pitching your idea stage to then, of course, scaling it up and getting it to the next level?
Right. So, the funding comes from 2 aspects. One is obviously the strength of the business idea and how you're going to execute is the team, but also how much of credibility you can show that your team will be able to execute it. So not only was the plan, on paper, but we used to create the mobile app, create an MVP, show that, this is how the transactions will take place, is the UI, UX, etc. So by kind of providing the output, which will be eventually polished and scaled, but that kind of helps. Instead, if I just go for a PPT with some slides, some vague idea, rather than that, if the product is ready, that gives a lot of credibility. So my initial focus was how to get something ready, which may not be the last and final version, but it will at least show that, okay, the team can build this product.
Understood. Whenever I speak to any investors, one of the first things that they always ask for or they talk about is proof of concept, which is exactly what you're talking about as well.
Right.
Talking about CashRich specifically now, I wanted to talk about because we have other wealth management apps as well in the market, but I'm sure CashRich is different. What is the USP according to you of CashRich?
Right. So, see, the other wealth management apps that are in the market, most of them, what I have seen are focused on the transaction layer more, in the sense that if anybody wants to buy the product, they can come create an account and they can start transacting. But there are certain mistakes that people make when they invest. And that's where we have our USP, that how can we prevent those investment mistakes. So I'll give you a few examples. In 2018, the small cap mutual funds were at a very high valuation. So if you looked at the returns of small cap schemes in 2018, then everything would look very good, plus 20, plus 30% returns. Okay. And if you go to any of these online websites, that's how most people purchase. They just type the name of the scheme in Google search, they get the first few links, they click, they see a 5-star rating, and then they see first 1 year rating or 3 year rating return, 1 year, 3 year return, and then they try to purchase. Now rating and return is fine, but that is not enough to take this decision. Okay, so in that small cap kind of a situation 2018, you would get these 5-star ratings and you will get plus 20-30% return. Naturally, someone who will assume that this is a very good thing to invest in. And that is what I had seen in most of the apps, that they would by default either sort by return or do something, and they will put all these small cap schemes upfront. And naturally, users will invest. But we found that these schemes are very overvalued, and it's just a matter of time when they will go down. And that actually happened. And now also some of those schemes are in negative. Anybody who invested 2-3 years ago will be in a negative situation currently. Okay. But in CashRich, none of our users got affected because we, stopped showing those small cap schemes when their valuation was high. We did not even display those schemes. So if you don't display, then people don't invest. Very few people come and say that, I want to invest in this. And at that time, you may, also warn them that, okay, valuations are very high. But more or less, if you, the system itself controls by having a curated list of schemes, which we have researched, and we know that within that category, these are, better from a risk-adjusted basis rather than giving everything out. Okay. Understood. And another incident which has happened just in April this year, 6 Franklin Templeton schemes have wound up, and a lot of investors' money is stuck. As per my own knowledge, I think all the wealth management apps had those schemes, and their users, whoever has gone for those Franklin, must have got stuck. But in CashRich, no user got affected. Now, that is the difference. So why no users of CashRich got affected is because it was not, again, a fluke. It was a matter of investment research and credit research. And in February 2019, I had sent one email to the entire database of CashRich saying that though many of you want to invest in Franklin Templeton schemes, but we will not have those schemes in our app. And the reason is we feel that they are taking more than the required credit risk, because the scheme has underlying securities, and you can understand whether they are buying something of good quality or bad quality. And these things don't suddenly happen. They happen over a period of time. And Absolutely. It is not a black swan event that, suddenly one day it has happened. It is a black swan if you didn't follow the story. If you know what is happening, then it not be surprising. Okay. So, because we told this to our user base and we didn't enable those schemes in our app, nobody could invest also. Now nobody has lost the money. So that is where some amount of risk management is required from a financial research side. Otherwise, in fintech, if it becomes only UI, UX and tech and no finance, it's not a proper fintech product. So that's where I think we have differentiated.
And I completely agree with you, because regardless of the product or regardless of the amount of AI or machine learning that you incorporate into your app, people are still coming to you because they want to depend on you. And there is a huge trust factor, yes. Which, like you very rightly said right at the beginning of our conversation, the biggest problem that you had was that you couldn't trust the people who are recommending investment vehicles to you or your father, even though you were meeting them in person.
Yes. Right.
So I think if you're able to overcome that trust factor, even via the app with your customers, I think you've already won. So just a personal question, Sougata. It's a very catchy name, CashRich. Who came up with it, and what is the genesis of that name?
So I had explored many names for this app, and it was around 2015 when I was just exploring different names. And I had done some surveys also by giving people a few options and asking them which one would you like. And mostly in all the surveys, CashRich had the highest rating in terms of the users giving me a feedback that, okay, this is the name which I like. And the other reason was that it was easy to pronounce and easy to spell, like CASH and RICH. You don't make mistake in the spelling. Okay, and you kind of remember it also easily. So those were important points for me. But when I wanted to buy the domain, it was it was not available as such. It was like a premium domain name, and I didn't know who had this domain name at that time. So CashRich CashRich.com was a very difficult domain which I had to purchase through an auction, and it took a lot of time and risk because I had to send money to some escrow and I didn't know whether the domain is coming to me or not, etc. And it was a couple of lakhs at that stage when I didn't have funding. So I took that risk at that time because I thought that I can start with a 500 rupee CashRich.in domain. But then after some time, if the business really takes off, then if I don't have the .com, it will be a problem. So that is a risk I took at that stage.
No, congratulations on the name as well. I have a couple of questions coming in from the audience as well, Sougata. What or who are your role models both in the business world as well as in your personal life?
Okay, I think in the business side, it will be Steve Jobs. I think his attention to detail and design is something that we all appreciate and admire. He goes in the details, and he focuses a lot on every minute activity. Like the product itself has to be quite good. So there, on the finance side, for me, the product is not just the app, but also the investment schemes and the logic and the risk management, everything together. So that's where I am also trying to be focusing on that the overall investment experience of the user is good, because here investment experience has been confused by fintech apps in general, that investment experience is dark mode, or investment experience is having some nice fancy animation in the app, which is not true. Investment experience is obviously the app and all should work, but investment experience will be good if your money grows better and is safer. Okay, so even if so that's where that is how the investment experience has to improve. So so the focus should be in that direction.
Okay, and personally, do you have any role models that you'd like to talk about?
So personally, like in Bengal, like we admire Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose for his patriotism, but also he was very entrepreneurial to have gone to another country, create an army, and that's a huge sacrifice for the country as well, but also very difficult to do. Like I can't imagine how somebody would do all this at that time when there were so many constraints.
Absolutely. No, those are some great role models. I have another question from somebody who's contemplating starting out. Rohit asks, balancing family life with starting up, what are some of the things that I need to keep in mind?
Okay, so I think if he can start early, then that is better, as early as possible. If you are bachelor, then you have less constraint. Further, if you are married but without a kid, there is less constraint. Further, if you are married with kid, the constraints will keep increasing, because
of course
with each person in your family, you have to have some things which you have to plan according to them. So starting early is better. And also when you're starting, you should have a good idea of the cash flow management, because you don't know how long this journey will be. And the worst thing which can happen is running out of cash. So that financial planning must be done in a proper way, with enough cushion for health related emergency or some other financial emergency that can come up. So if these two things are taken care, then the work-life balance can also work. Otherwise, mainly what happens, or almost 90-95% startups close, is not because they get bankrupt due to debt. That doesn't happen for a startup ecosystem. That happens in a bigger company setup. Most startups die because they run out of cash. And because of that cash flow management, what happens is it creates stress in your family life as well. So if that financial management is done properly, then things should be smooth.
No, I think that's excellent advice. Thank you for being so honest and authentic with us, Sougata.
Yeah, sure.
Is there anything else that we might have missed out that you'd like to talk about before we wrap up?
When you asked about the USP of Cash, is another aspect which I wanted to highlight was a product that we have started called Dynamic SIP. So the reason why I wanted to highlight that is that's a process which is not there in any other app currently. And what it does is, instead of putting your money in the equity markets always, it tries to understand what is the relative valuation of the market and automatically split your money into fixed income and equities. So if share market is very high, say in January 2020, share market was, Sensex was 41,000, 42,000, very high. So at that time, only say 10%, 15% of your money will go into share market. And when March things correct and there's a crash, then say 70-80% of your money will go into share market. Automatically by doing this, your returns improve, and also the behavioral and emotional aspects of investments are taken care, because when things are up, you should be investing less, but it opposite behavior happens. And when things crash, then you should be investing more, but then people are scared and they don't invest. So to correct that behavior in a large scale, environment, you can't really speak to people and do counseling on a one-on-one basis and a scale. So to do it at a large scale, we have automated this process.
No, and I think that's a great initiative. It's almost like having your own personal investment advisor for all of your clients.
Yeah, and the technology is doing
Right,
it, so
yeah.
it's automated anyways. Yeah.
Perfect. So Sougata, it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for making the time to come on the CEO's chair.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Siddharth. It was great speaking with you.
Absolutely. And we hopefully will continue to stay in touch. And I look forward to catching up in person whenever you're back in Mumbai and all of us can travel normally.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Take care of yourself, Sougata. All the best.
Yeah, nice to connect with you. Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye.
Take care, everyone.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone, for watching another exciting episode of the CEO's Chair. Hope to see you all again soon. Thank you.